Arch Manning. Touchdown, Mustangs.
We're not done yet, boys.
Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Louisville, Texas, is senior writer Mike Craven in the studio, live and in person. What's going on, Mike?
Y'all were right. It is kind of cold in here.
Yes.
I always make fun of you guys from like my home office, and like, it can't be that cold in here. It is cold in here.
Yeah, you realize how we're in the Arctic over here. I have gloves legitimately at my desk. Sometimes I'll just wear a short sleeve and like winter gloves because my hands get cold.
I get it.
Look like a robber.
I get it. It's a sweater weather in here. For sure.
So yeah, it's cold in the studio, but we're keeping it fire with our takes in here. We're talking about the top 5 quarterback rankings way too early for 2026. And Craven, where would Drake May come in on this list of top 5 quarterbacks based on the Super Bowl performance 2 nights ago?
Not in the top 5.
I don't
know
think
if
so.
Sam Darnold would be in the top 5 after that performance at the Super Bowl. So neither one of the quarterbacks looked all that great on Sunday.
So we'll hope these quarterbacks look better coming up in 2026. And I want to go 5 through 1. Let's keep the people waiting and build up to the best player. You want to start? You want me to start? I'll let the visitors start.
All right. My number 5 is Brad Jackson.
Love it.
I think he's the best quarterback in the G6 here in the state of Texas, one of the top quarterbacks at the G6 level across the nation. I think he's one of the reasons that Texas State has a chance to hit the ground running in the Pac-12. And if I was to ask people which quarterback ran for the most yards in 2025, I'm not sure Brad Jackson would be the answer, but he absolutely is the answer. He had 3,200 yards passing, over 740 yards rushing, nearly 4,000 yards of total offense, combined for 38 touchdowns. So production is there, experience is there, going into his second year as a full-time starter in the Pac-12. I think he's hard to leave off the list.
And I think it's also him coming back, but his wide receivers coming back, Chris Don, Bo Sparks. I think they were first and third in the Sun Belt respectively. So you have to love the supporting pieces around them. I got to ask you, Craven, for this list, how much did you factor in supporting casts here? Or is it just based on their personal ability?
I factored it in a little bit because these are projections, like who are going to be the 5 quarterbacks that are best in 2026, and some of that is supporting cast, who your wide receivers are, what your offensive line looks like, and also who's calling your plays. And at Texas State, I think we have proof of concept that they're going to put up big numbers. Like, the Bobcat offense is going to score. It's going to put up yards. They were the only offense last year with 2 wide receivers over 1,000 yards. Both of those guys are back. So I think Brad's going to go over 4,000 yards of total offense. He might get to 40 touchdowns. I think he's going to have a big time year there at Texas State.
And that offensive system was a question mark in San Marcos because they were losing offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich to Texas Tech. And I think G.J. Kinney maybe didn't got a little abrasive about it. I don't want to say go that far, but I think he's a confident guy and said, this is my offense too. And I think he proved a lot about his play calling acumen in this last year with Brad Jackson at the helm. Did it almost surprise you how there was no drop-off really from Mac Leftwich to G.J. Kinney, Landon Keppel?
Not too much, just because I know how much G.J. Kinney has his hands in the honeypot there on the offensive side of the ball. Like, it is as much his system. Even when Mac was there, it was a collaborative deal, even if he's not calling every single play. Like, through the week when you're putting together the game plans and talking how to attack the defenses and what the quarterback does well, like, he's bringing in the personnel. He's going over the game plan. So not at all surprised that Texas State scored a lot of points. I mean, look up the road at UTSA, right? Like, they have a new offensive coordinator all the time, but the offense stays the same because the coach stays the same as the head coach. So my question marks going into last year is, how do you do it with the redshirt freshman? Like, would Brad Jackson be the player that he became? I mean, after that season, I don't think there's much question marks now.
Well, and a couple years ago when he first comes out of San Antonio Reagan, I know G.J. Kinney had kind of told us that Brad Jackson has a chance to be a program legend here when it's all said and done. But then G.J. Kinney also brought in 4 quarterbacks in the spring portal window and just said, we're all going to compete, right here. And I think that's part of his NFL background, like you've spoken about before, but no one is more addicted to bringing in quarterbacks to compete than G.J. Kinney is.
I just think G.J. Kinney likes to watch quarterbacks at practice.
If you could have 11 quarterbacks out there,
right.
a whole offensive quarterbacks, he would.
And last year was a little bit different with the spring portal window. And, if you bring in a bunch of guys to go through spring ball, like it'll take care of itself. And a few of them can go find new homes after spring practice if they're not looking good or if they don't look like they're going to start. But I guess last year was different as well because you can think you have something in your next big-time quarterback, but you need to push him. You need to give him some competition. You need to make sure he knows that it's not just his job to take. And so, I think it was smart last year. Like this year they didn't do it, right?
Yep.
Because they know they have a starting quarterback. And so I think with his experience, with his production, he's going to be third-year college player now. The only question I have about Brad Jackson is what is the difference in the Pac-12 defenses, and can Texas State have as much offensive success this year as they did against Sunbelt teams?
Yeah, and I guess we won't know for sure until it happens, but I think his play style translates to the Pac-12 because I look at a guy like John Mateer, who is now at Oklahoma, but at Washington State was balling out, and I think they have really similar play styles.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good comparison. I think Brad Jackson's the best dual threat quarterback we have in the state.
I think so as well. I really like what you said about if you had to guess who had the most rushing yards, it would not be Brad Jackson. That would be your first guess, but he was electric out there and super athletic. But I also want to talk about, too, you mentioned how Brad Jackson's not having to compete for his job anymore. And we probably should have brought this up at the top of the show. Not a whole hell of a lot of quarterbacks are having to compete for their job anymore. The quarterback competitions have gone away in college football, Craven.
Yeah, and I think it's a function of revenue share in the transfer portal. There's not a salary cap, but there's an amount of money that you're working with as a university, and you don't want to sink too much of that into the backup quarterback. And so you find a guy, you bet on that horse, and you roll with them. And if you look across the state of Texas, there's 3 quarterback open jobs, and that's North Texas, UTEP, and Rice. And I don't think the UTEP and Rice jobs are all that open. They are, and there will be competitions in the spring, but I think we could bet a decent amount of money and be right now on who's going to start at UTEP and at Rice. And so, we have 1 out of 13 being a quarterback competition, and I think it's just because you have to pay such a premium for that spot that you can't do it twice. Mm-hmm. It's better to go spend the rest of that money on wide receivers or offensive line or pass rushers or in your secondary. And so quarterback competitions are just becoming a thing of the past.
Is that an issue, you think, for college football, or is this just us media members not having as many quarterback competitions and narratives in the offseason to hold us over until the season starts?
It's probably about who you root for. Backup play has probably never been worse. If you lose your starting quarterback, maybe that drop to the second guy has never been a bigger gap. But if you're a fan of Rice and of UTEP and of Sam Houston and the G6 schools, you can go get a backup now that you would have never gotten onto campus before. And they would have just stayed at UCF or wherever they were and continued being backups. Now you can go and be like, hey, maybe you can't play full-time starter snaps in the Big 12, but you can come be our starter. And so I think for the G6 level, the quarterback play is probably better than it's been in the past. We just don't have the depth at those positions. And that's probably true across the board, right? The depth at Georgia is not the same as it used to be. But I think the talent at James Madison is higher than it's ever been, right? Yep. And so like most things in college football now, the answer depends on what team you root for.
Okay, so Craven's number 5 quarterback is Texas State's Brad Jackson. My number 5 quarterback is going to be Houston Cougars' Connor Wegman. He helped flip Houston from 4-8 to 10-3 last year. And Craven, you mentioned how Brad Jackson, the best dual threat quarterback in the state of Texas, Connor Wegman was not far behind. He had 644 rushing yards, which were more than his 3 years at Texas A&M combined. And it was so interesting because I know you covered Connor Wegman in high school as a recruit, and I only covered Connor Wegman in college. And there was always this divide, I think, between us, but also just in the greater landscape of college football media based on if you saw Wegman in high school and if you only saw Wegman in college. I never thought he was a dual threat player. And you had mentioned, no, he is a dual threat player and he can run around there. And I said, well, I have not seen that yet. And we saw it at Houston last year.
Yeah, that was the quarterback that came out of Cypress Bridgeland, who was also a baseball star who could have gone and played professional baseball. He was never a Vince Young type mobile quarterback, but he could lower his head and get physical and go get you 5 or 6 yards. And we saw that at Houston. He was their short yardage running back. Like it was wing T, student body right, student body left, like old school football, which, makes sense coming from Willie Fritz and what they like to do at Houston. I think Wigman is the perfect example of how much just health and fit matter for quarterbacks. He got healthy. He's had some ankle and foot stuff, leg things that have kind of hampered his mobility behind a bad offensive line at Texas A&M. And I just don't think he ever fit in the Jimbo Fisher system. I'm not sure he fit in the Colin Klein system. But you get him with Slade Nagel, you get him with Willie Fritz, and what I think both of those guys do the best, their superpowers as coaches, is they identify what you do well, they identify what you do wrong, and they just put it all in the right bucket. Right? Here are the 5 things you do really well. Well, we're building the whole plane out of that. And we're not going to do this stuff out of here. Well, you have some play callers who are stubborn. I would say the guy at A&M who was calling plays when Wigman was there is one of these guys where it's like, this is what I do. And I've been doing it for 30 years and it's worked and we've won a national championship. Like, you figure it out. I don't have to figure it out. You figure it out. I think Wigman went to a more quarterback-friendly environment. Playing in the Big 12 against those defense probably doesn't hurt either. And he just finally got into a system that goes to his strengths. Yeah,
it's amazing how free you play when you don't have to memorize an encyclopedia of a playbook like Jimbo Fisher was having those guys do. But one question I had for Wegman going into last year too was he's a little injury prone, right? And I didn't know if him being such a dual threat guy, how that would play with his injury history. He stayed healthy-ish through the whole season, but he definitely had bumps and bruises as the year went on, and I think that affected some of his consistency as a thrower. How much of a concern is that for you going into this year, especially now that Dean Connors, the running back, is no longer there?
Yeah, I think that's the number one concern for the Houston offense. I believe their offensive line got better. I could argue the running back position is as good, if not better, if Mekhi Hughes hits and becomes the player we saw at Tulane. I would say the running back position got better. They kept Amari Thomas. Like, there's a lot of things to like about the Houston offense. One thing not to like is the reliance on Connor Wegman in the red zone and on 3rd and 4th and short. Like, you don't need your quarterback taking that many hits. Even if he can handle it, you just don't want him taking that many hits. And you cannot convince me that some of the interceptions we saw late in the season that we didn't see early in the season were about those bumps and bruises.
Yeah.
And so if you're Houston, you want to get more physical in the run game, not only along the offensive line, but at the running back position. And so you can use those guys to take those hits. And if not, maybe this is the opportunity for a Keyshawn Henderson, who's a 5-star to come in, who played private school ball, that may not be ready to step into the Big 12 and play, starter snaps. But what if you get him 5 carries a game? And you can run some play actions off that, and you can get him some looks. And now he goes into his redshirt freshman year as playing a little bit and getting his feet wet. And so I do think the Cougars are going to get creative and look to other guys to take some of that load off. And maybe that lowers Wigman's running numbers and his overall production. But I think it'll make them a better football team in November and hopefully in December if they're playing meaningful football.
Because for how awesome Dean Connors was, and you and I both avid fans of Dean Connors. Yeah. I went and saw him in the East-West Shrine Bowl, and there was a scout talking to me about how Connors actually was the leading receiver of all running backs in the FBS, but he wasn't necessarily at the Big 12 level, like running between the tackles, get you those tough yardage type guys. That fell on Wegman's shoulders, so hopefully that can fall on Mekhi Hughes or Keyshawn Henderson, like you say. But Mekhi Hughes is a huge variable because at Tulane with Slade Nagel, he was a 1,400-yard rusher. Then he goes to Oregon and disappears. He has 70 the entire season. So really need Mekhi Hughes to hit.
Yeah, he's a bigger physical back, just a one-cut guy. I think he'll fit really well in that Houston offense, obviously, with his familiarity with what it was like at Tulane. And another thing that happened to Houston is they just lost a lot of depth within the running back position. They had some guys. When I went there in the spring last year for magazine season, the running back room was the position they were most excited about on the offensive side of the ball. And then they just lost 2 or 3 of those guys to major injuries and just didn't get to see them. And Dean Connors is, like in the NFL, he's going to be a 3rd down back.
For sure.
Catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's not the biggest guy in the world. I remember sitting down with him when he was at Rice to do an interview. He's just not the biggest dude in the world. And so they had to lean on Wigman. And to Wigman's credit, he stepped up and was able to do that. But I don't think that's what you want your quarterback to do on a week-in, week-out basis.
For sure. Love Texas, love football, then you'll love College Station. Home of the Aggies and so much more. Come eat, play, relax, and say howdy to one heck of a good time. Plan your trip at visitcollegestation.com. Okay, so my number 5, Connor Wegman.
That's my number 4.
That's your number 4. Okay, so we talked out Connor Wegman.
Yeah.
I'll go my number 4 then. It's Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed. Which, do you have him on your list, Craven? If Wegman's your 4, surely Reed is up there on your list, ahead of Wegman, right?
I do not have Marcel Reed.
Wow.
I'll give you the floor to do the favorable Marcel Reed and why he's on your list, and then I will combat that.
Well, the favorable Marcel Reed is they start 11-0. The unfavorable Marcel Reed is what they did after starting 11-0. They led A&M to an 11-0 start, first college football playoff appearance in program history. I think for this, he earned second-team All-Texas quarterback per you on the Dave Campbell's All-Texas team. But the last 2 games, Craven, against Texas and Miami in the college football playoff, 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So I would have had Marcel Reed way higher on this list if the season had ended after South Carolina, but unfortunately for A&M, actually not unfortunately for A&M because they made the college football playoff, but maybe unfortunately for Marcel Reed, it didn't, and he's lower.
Yeah, I cannot shake the last 3 games of the season. I mean, even that South Carolina game, the first half was awful.
True.
Right? So out of his last 6 halves of football, 5 of them were bad. And then you start digging into the numbers a little bit more. You know, they play against 3 ranked teams. He's got 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. You know, against against Power 4 teams in general, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. You know, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception against G5 competition and against FCS when they play like Samford or whatever. And so, to me, I don't think Marcel Reed is the reason A&M's offense got better. I think it was about Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, that running back room, the offensive line being one of the top 5 to 10 offensive lines in the country. Like, that makes a quarterback's job easier, and it's something that Connor Wegman never had.
Yeah.
You know, he's throwing to Noah Thomas, and he's got an offensive line that stunk.
Yep.
Right, which is why he was injured all the time. And so I think Marcel Reed was great for the Colin Klein offense. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he has an opportunity to win big, as we just talked about with the Super Bowl. You don't need your quarterback to be the superstar of your team to win. Carson Beck got Miami to a national championship, right? It's not like Carson. I watched Carson Beck in the same stadium as Marcel Reed. It wasn't like there was a big advantage on the Miami side in terms of quarterback. But I'm not sure. Like, we talk about baseball and the WAR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, wins are above replacement. Like, what is Marcel Reed's? Like, if I put Kevin Jennings into that A&M team, or Brandon Sorsby, or Josh Hoover, or any of those kind of guys, like, they would be good too. And so maybe if Reed takes the same jump he took from year 1 to year 2, from year 2 to year 3, I'll look dumb. But the quarterback we saw against good teams was an additive to Texas A&M. They were winning for other reasons.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the Super Bowl. We talk about teams not having to have just an all-star quarterback to win it all. But I'd take another Super Bowl narrative from that, and Drake May with the Patriots, a younger quarterback like Marcel Reed is a younger quarterback that people wondered, was he buoyed by the schedule he played? I'm not saying, look, I'm throwing this out there. I'm not saying Marcel Reed was a schedule merchant, although some of those stats you threw out kind of led me to believe he might have been. But there will be people going into next year saying Marcel Reed played easy schedule. Look what happened when he played the actually really good teams. He was not the same quarterback, kind of like Drake May was against the Seattle Seahawks and that awesome defense. But I love how you leave it open to be proven wrong. And I'm leaving it open to be proven wrong as well, because I was not a huge Marcel Reed guy going into the 2025 season based on what we saw in 2024. And I could also be saying going into 2026 that maybe Marcel Reed can't win a championship, but he could take that same jump like you're talking about and prove us all wrong.
Yeah, when you look back on Texas A&M's season and you wonder why they overachieved, and they absolutely did overachieve. Like, the Las Vegas total, I think, was 7.5 or 8.5. Like, they weren't supposed to be in the college football playoff. So A&M definitely overachieved. If I was to sit here and say, like, list the reasons, give me 4 reasons why Texas A&M overachieved, the number one wouldn't be Marcel Reed. Yeah. Like, it would be the schedule, probably, and how it broke. And that
A&M fans are going to hate this so much. I love it.
But A&M shouldn't apologize for that.
No, for sure.
Like, that's how it works, right? Like, your path sometimes dictates how far you make it in the trail. And so, and again, I don't think you need your quarterback to be the number 1 overall pick to go win a national championship. Like, this is college football. Like, Marcel Reed is good enough if everything around him works. I'm not calling Marcel Reed bad. I just think in this state with so many good quarterbacks that have to be asked to carry their football teams, like, Brad Jackson is the reason Texas State is good. or like one of the
For
main
sure, because it
reasons.
sure as hell wasn't that defense.
Like, look what Connor Wigman did for Houston last year. Like, Connor Wigman is one of the reasons they went from winning 4 to winning 10. Like, one of the top 2 or 3 reasons, maybe the top reason that they did that. I would say it's the wide receivers, or it's the offensive line, or it's the schedule, the improvements of the secondary. Like, there are just a lot of reasons I think A&M got better and won 11 games last year. And I could be prisoner of the moment as well. Like, if those 2 bad games happen in September, and then he plays the rest of the season like he had, previously, like, we probably are having a different conversation. I just have a hard time shaking what I saw against South Carolina in the first half, against Texas, against Miami.
And I agree with you, Craven, but I also am just envisioning the YouTube comments from Gig'em fans. And you're saying, well, hold on, Connor Wegman was the reason Houston was a 10-win team. Marcel Reed was not for sure the reason A&M made the college football playoff, although he was a reason. He was not the reason. But how can you say this? Because Marcel Reed beat out Connor Wegman as one who forced him to transfer. So how could Connor Wegman be higher on your list?
Yeah.
Let's just reemphasize that A&M in 2025 was not the same team as A&M in 2024.
Yeah, they were better coached. They had better personnel around them, better wide receivers, better offensive line. And I would also push back on the idea that Marcel Reed beat out Connor Wigman. Like, they were on campus at the same time, and Connor Wigman was the starter. It took, like, A&M collapsing, some injuries, that second half against LSU. And a lot of the reason that Marcel Reed was better for that 2024 team is because there wasn't anything around them. Like, they needed somebody who could go make plays with his legs, and Wigman's more of a power runner than go get you 60 on a scramble. And so I think Reed just fit better in what A&M wanted to do offensively. But I think if Wigman, his college career had started with Mike Elko, Colin Klein, had that offensive line, had those wide receivers, I think Connor Wigman's the starter at Texas A&M. And maybe that's me holding on to my opinion of Connor Wigman too tight. But I think what he did at Houston kind of validates that Connor Wigman's a really good quarterback. And sometimes it's just about fit and personnel around you. And, Marcel Reed can improve and become one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the state of Texas. I'm just not sure that he is right now.
Yeah, so he's outside of your list. You have Brad Jackson at 5, Connor Wigman at 4. I have Connor Wigman at 5, Marcel Reed at 4. Visit Lubbock is a proud partner of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Gambling Gauchos podcast. Visit Lubbock has put together their guide for all things to do, can't miss experiences, and where to stay if you're traveling into Lubbock for the game. Thank you again to Visit Lubbock, and to learn more, head on over to visitlubbock.org. Craven, who's your number 3?
Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech, the Cincinnati transfer. I will admit off the top that my number 2 and number 3 are pretty interchangeable.
And mine are as well. Let's just get it out there. Number 2 and number 3 for us are either Kevin Jennings, Brendan Sorsby, flipped in that order. You are 3 Brendan Sorsby, 2 Kevin Jennings. I'm the opposite, 3 Kevin Jennings, 2 Brendan Sorsby.
Yeah, what concerns me about Brandon Sorsby, and it's not the biggest concern in the world, but I think he's only had one really good year as a college quarterback, and now he's going into a new system with new players, new teams. And fifth-year senior, he's an old guy. I don't think that's going to trip him up too much. But when comparing him against Kevin Jennings, who's going into his 3rd year with the same play caller at the same university, playing against the same teams, I just gave the edge to Jennings because I think he had a better year last year, honestly, than people give him credit for.
Okay, so we can talk about the better year for Kevin Jennings, but also in terms of having a new coordinator, a new scheme, is that a deterrent for you to pick Brendan Sorsby, or are you like me and saying, well, if the new coordinator and new scheme are better, I'm actually seeing that as a plus.
Yeah.
That's why I'm ranking him higher.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but you still got to do the work, and you still got to see it, right? Like, what we think on paper this Texas Tech offense can be is a theory. What I think Kevin Jennings can do in the SMU offense is provable. Like, last year, when not healthy, Kevin Jennings threw for over 3,500 yards from the pocket.
He was 9th in the nation in passing yards.
And I would say going into last year, that was the concern for Kevin Jennings. Like, can he stand in the pocket and be that type of passer? He does turn the ball over too much. But I think I've seen it more from him, so I gave him the nod being in the same offense. But again, I'm not going to argue too much against Brendan Sorsby. Really good season last year, one of the breakout players in college football, had Cincinnati in the Big 12 race and was, arguably the first or second best quarterback available in the portal.
But I'll go back to Kevin Jennings and the turnovers, and maybe I'm not even – I'm going against my own point I'm trying to make in putting Kevin Jennings below Brendan Sorsby. I don't fault Kevin Jennings for the turnovers that much because I think it was a bit of a Josh Hoover situation at TCU last year where SMU had an awesome running game Kevin Jennings' first year. Part of that was Kevin Jennings. A whole hell of a lot of that was Brashard Smith, the running back. They lose Brashard Smith. I don't think they replaced him well enough. And then you take Kevin Jennings' legs away and say, Kevin Jennings, play 7-on-7 football and lead us to victories. And he did, but with that comes a lot more turnovers. So I don't necessarily fault him.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a lot on Kevin Jennings' plate last year. The injuries don't help. And I do think there's times where he tries to do too much. And they need to coach that out of him a little bit, but you don't want to sacrifice the other side of it and the playmaking ability. He was just very hampered with injuries throughout most of the year. And so I don't think we saw 100% Kevin Jennings. And my question would be, if they were both in the transfer portal, who has a bigger market, Kevin Jennings or Brendan Sorsby?
I think Brendan Sorsby does. I'm not saying it's correct, but I think Brendan Sorsby does because I look at like top 10 quarterback in QBR and PFF, second team all Big 12 quarterback. Kevin Jennings wasn't an all-conference guy. I don't know what the PFF numbers were, but I think Sorsby, right or wrong, would have had the bigger market.
Kevin Jennings had some of the big dogs that spend a lot of money on quarterbacks begging him to get into the transfer portal.
Okay.
You know,
Ooh.
like...
a little windhorse action from you, Craven. Right. A point going on here.
Right. Like one that may have paid another ACC school to get a quarterback out of a contract to get them to South Beach wanted Kevin Jennings. You know, like... And so I think it would have been a pretty comparable market. I think if Kevin Jennings gets into the portal, he's right there with Sam Leavitt, Brendan Sorsby in terms of like the top quarterbacks available. And I do wonder if the portal is starting to cloud our judgments a little bit in terms of like who the best players are. Like being the best player in the portal, does that make you the best player available, right? Or the best player out there? Like sometimes we don't think about the guys who stay, and we kind of lose track of that. Kevin Jennings has led SMU to, I mean, they've beaten Florida State, Clemson, Miami. I think they're like 14-2 in conference play. They've been to a playoff game. They've been to an ACC championship, all things that like Sorsby hasn't led a team to. So to me, the way you would knock Jennings on this list and put Sorsby ahead is the interceptions. But I'm kind of with you to where those don't bother me as much because I think they're a function of what he's asked to do.
And also, I will admit, Sorsby being the number one rated player in the transfer portal kind of clouded my judgment. But I would also say, like, there's a reason we're talking about quarterbacks first in our way too early position rankings. There's a reason that in the NFL draft, quarterbacks always go first, even if they aren't, like, hypothetically the best overall prospect. And there's probably a reason the quarterback is the number one overall player in the transfer portal instead of a linebacker or a safety that could be better at his positions because they matter so much more that they're such a need, and then they get placed at number one in those rankings.
And there's a scarcity to it, right? Like there's a reason a surgeon gets paid more than I do. And there's a lot more people who could write about football than to do open heart surgery, right? And so, like quarterbacks, there's only one on the field. And there's not that many that can lead you to championships. And so I don't want this to be like like being down on Brendan Sorsby as much as I just think I'm higher on Kevin Jennings. And I feel like since he's kind of been there, they didn't go back to the CFP. Like we just kind of forget how good he is. But he had 300 yards less rushing in 25 than he did at 24. If you give him those yards, say he's healthy and he matches that rushing total, he's got 4,000 yards of total offense.
Yeah. Also, how many people do you think have a quarterback list where Brad Jackson's over Marcel Reed? You're saying that many more people could do what you do, Craven, but no one's doing it like you.
Yeah, that might be a reason to why I am paid when I am paid. We shall see. But yeah, some of it's like competition, right? I always try to look at these things like pound for pound lists.
Yep.
Right? And it's like Brad Jackson is a better quarterback in his conference than Marcel Reed is in his. Like if you were to rank the SEC quarterbacks, where would Marcel Reed be? 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere mid pack to lower than that. If you were to rank Pac-12 quarterbacks, Brad Jackson's like 2 at the worst.
For sure.
And so I do take some of that into account as well.
My last note on Brendan Sorsby, I read a great article from the Dallas Morning News. Sean McFarland wrote it talking about Brendan Sorsby's career at Lake Dallas and to going up through the college ranks and becoming the number one overall player in the transfer portal. And I didn't know that Spencer Leftwich, Mac Leftwich's father, was the offensive line coach at Lake Dallas. So that's a interesting nugget. So Spencer Leftwich probably with the character vouch for Mac Leftwich to go ahead and go take him.
Yeah, no, for sure. Any familiarity in the transfer portal era is huge because they're vouches both ways, right? Like, not only can Spencer Leftwich vouch for Brendan Sorsby to Mac, well, if Brendan Sorsby had a good relationship with Spencer Leftwich, is like, oh, I'm going to play for his son. I know the Leftwiches, like that, like I already have a relationship there. We can talk about the dad, like they're points of contact. And from talking to coaches, because the portal is so sped up, like in recruiting, you get a year or two to like get to know these guys, get to know their family, get to know their coaches, what they're about, who they are outside the football field. It's speed dating in the transfer portal. And the more kind of points of connection you have to these players, their high school coach or they know you, like that helps a lot. And so I think it was one of the reasons they were able to get Sorsby.
Yeah, it's kind of like whenever you're meeting someone new, you say, I'm from Frisco, and they go, oh, do you know this person? Mm-hmm. It's like, no, not at all. Right. Frisco has 14 high schools, man. I don't know them at all. Like, you're looking for points of similarity and contact to, like, ingratiate yourself to them.
100%.
Okay, now let's do a drum roll, please, for our number one. Let me say who we've got on our top 5 list up to this point. So, my list. Houston quarterback Connor Wegman's number 5. Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed is number 4. SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings, number 3. Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby, number 2. Craven's list: Brad Jackson, Connor Wegman, Brendan Sorsby, Kevin Jennings, and drumroll please, we both have at number 1 Baylor quarterback DJ Lagway. No, I'm just kidding. There's one guy we have, and it's Arch Manning at Texas.
I think it's got to be Arch Manning at Texas. And I've said this on this podcast before. He was overrated the first 6 weeks of the season. He has somehow become underrated in terms of just the way fans talk about Arch Manning. And I get why it gets a little nauseating to like hear about Texas in the offseason and hear about Arch Manning and the last name and all that kind of stuff. But in his last 5 games, he had 15 total touchdowns to 1 interception. 10 touchdowns on the ground, 26 through the air with only 7 interceptions. Like, by the end of the season, Arch Manning was one of the best 5 to 10 quarterbacks in the country. What he did against Michigan in that bowl game was excellent as well. And then we talked earlier about how much the supporting cast matters. Everything around Arch Manning will be better next year than it was last year. So he's got experience. He's played in big games like at Ohio State, at Georgia. He's gone through the struggles. He's come out the other side. He's improved as the season goes on. And now you add Cam Coleman, a couple stars at running back, a better offensive line, a motivated Steve Sarkisian who's going to try to prove everybody wrong about the play calling and if he should be the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. And so to me, as many questions as we had about Arch Manning and how much projection there was going into 2025, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I had him as the first team quarterback in the magazine before he had started a game as like a full-time starter. I think it's all earned now. Like, he should be mentioned in the Heisman conversation. He should be mentioned on the top of these kind of lists because we've seen it. Yeah,
and when I watched the Cheez-It Bowl, I put out a tweet kind of jokingly about Arch Manning for Heisman next year, for real this time. Like, let's fire up that preseason hype train. And I know we're doing the exact same things we did last year, but I agree with you, Craven. What he went through in 2025 is going to make him actually prepared to deal with it. Like, I was reading an Athletic article earlier this week that Bruce Feldman wrote, and he's, a great reporter. He's written a few stories talking to Cooper Manning and Cooper Manning's wife, talking about how Arch dealt with the pressure of being the Texas quarterback. And I think, like, it's so funny because I know Bruce Feldman didn't write that first, the Athletic flop story, where it is an Athletic wrote Arch Manning is college football's first flop. But it's funny that Bruce goes, representing the Athletic, say, hey, Cooper, what did you think of my company calling your kid a flop? Like, how did you guys deal with that? Yeah,
that's where we need to get to in Dave Campbell's, where we're like making content.
You can't be liable for my takes.
We're going to have to like get with Marcel Reed's parents and be like, what do you think about Craven saying that your son isn't a top 5 quarterback in the state? I've been at companies that are big enough to where you like don't want other writers to like represent your viewpoints and stuff. And I do think that's just like media literacy at that kind of stuff. But like when it was written, also the headline got him in trouble.
For sure.
Like if you read the article, it wasn't all that bad, but the headline definitely got him in trouble. But the best way to become a good quarterback is to play quarterback. And Arch just hadn't played a lot of quarterback. Like, remember, there was, like, conversations on, like, remember when Steve Sarkisian, like, asked a reporter, like, what his face looks like when he poops?
Yeah.
You know, like there was just such a circus around Arch Manning, and people are going back through practice photos to see if he makes the grimace face and does he have an injury.
And not only that, but Steve Sarkisian, like you're mentioning, was saying, no, he always makes that poop face.
Right.
He always makes that poop face when he throws.
And then at the end of the year, he's dominating Michigan in a bowl game and beating A&M at home and kind of ending their chances to go play an SEC championship. And that was with a pretty poor run game and not a lot of talent around him at wide receiver, at least not consistent talent around him at wide receiver. But now you have Kim Coleman, Ryan Wingo, a couple running backs. Like, I just think the offense around him is going to be better. The experience and going through another offseason only going to make him better. Sark knows kind of more of what works and what doesn't work in real time with him. That's only going to make them better. I think the worst Arch Manning we've ever seen was last year, and it ended up being a pretty good product.
Yeah, if that's the worst it could have been, at the end of it, it was pretty damn good. Because, I mean, okay, the first 6 games, really bad, but also I think it's almost like exposure therapy. It's like go out and realize how bad it could be, your worst fear. You drop from preseason number 1 to unranked in record time, and the sun comes up the next day, and you're okay.
Yeah, and everybody had been loving up Arch Manning his whole college career so far, right? It had all been positive. It all had been positive. And then it suddenly wasn't. And you wonder how that's going to affect a young man who played private school football, who's not coming in. And he handled it well. He handled it as well as you could and came out the other side of it a better quarterback, probably a better leader inside the locker room as well. So I think Texas's offense is going to be good. I think Arch Manning is going to be great. And I would say if you're a fan base that disagrees with this, like, would you trade your quarterback for Arch Manning? If I gave you truth serum, you would.
Yeah, for sure. Just like if you gave Steve Sarkisian and the Texas fan base true serum before last year when they were ranked number 1 for the first time ever, they'd say, no, we probably should have been around number 20 or so. So it was just a lot of outsized expectations. Good thing we're not putting those on Arch Manning, though, this upcoming year. No more outside expectations like Heisman expectations, national championship expectations. We're not going to do any of that this year.
It's more fair now.
For sure.
Like, it is a lot more fair now. And there's a lot of studies out there that show, like, experience at quarterback is the golden ticket. Like, you can hit the ground running as a wide receiver. You can hit the ground running as an edge rusher, as a secondary player. Like, you got to play quarterback. And he just hadn't played a ton of quarterback, not meaningful games like where you're the starter, where guys got film on you, and he struggled. And then he didn't, and then he was really good, right? And so I think he's going to have a big year.
Yeah, after being named college football's first flop, Manning went 7-1, had 23 touchdowns, 3 turnovers. I think it's going to be a big year for Manning in 2026 because of him and also that offense around him. Craven, did you have an honorable mention, a number 6 player? Because mine was Brad Jackson, who you had at number 5. Yeah. I thought Brad Jackson was phenomenal. I just thought I had to put Marcel Reed in there based on what his team did. But I totally see your argument for why he's not there.
Yeah, if we had a top 6, Marcel Reed would have been my 6th. I definitely think he's a top half quarterback in the state of Texas. 11-0 to start the season. Like, he was a Heisman favorite, or not a favorite, but like a Heisman contender there going into November.
They briefly launched a Heisman campaign for him, and then the first half for South Carolina happened.
Right. So, yeah, he would have been my 6th. He was right outside there. I knew the pushback I would get for leaving him out of there, but I just think leaving out Brad Jackson would have hurt me more than leading out Marcel Reed.
You couldn't have slept with yourself at night.
I mean, Brad Jackson had 38 total touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't know. And fewer interceptions. And I just cannot get away from Reed's performance against the P4 teams. But he's got a chance to improve that because he overachieved what I thought he would going into the season.
For sure.
Like, the reason I thought A&M would be closer to kind of their normal Texas 8-4 was because I didn't trust the quarterback. But the schedule got a little bit easier than it was supposed to be. I do think Marcel Reed took some big jumps, and he was surrounded by some big-time wide receivers. I do a podcast every week about A&M football with Jay Arnold. And if you go through those box scores, like, over 50% of Marcel Reed's passing yards were after the catch. Like, we'd break down every game, and we'd be like, Marcel Reed threw for 335 yards, and you look at the extended box score, and it's like 202 of those were after the catch. You know, he had really big-time wide receivers. I think A&M's doing that again, bringing in Isaiah Horton from Alabama. Craver is back. Bethel Roman and those guys, Roman Bethel. I always get that one mixed up.
It's tough. They both sound awesome.
But I think A&M has done a great job of building a team around Marcel Reed that allows him to flourish, where I think some of the other quarterbacks on this list are the thing it's built around.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference to me.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to get a bunch of A&M fans in our comments section because we have hit the Aggie hater bingo. I mean, you just dropped the Texas 8-4. I'm pretty sure I said Marcel won Reed at some point. So we're going to get a lot of Gig'em fans angry at us. But I would tell them that if I gave y'all Truth Serum, you would be saying the same things as us. Just like if I gave Texas fans Truth Serum, they would have been saying we probably should have been ranked number 1.
Yeah.
And you know I know that because I was at a Super Bowl party last week, and it's a hodgepodge group, and my fiance is talking to one of her friends, and she says, "Oh, how is that guy's girlfriend? I've never met her." And she goes, "Oh, she's nice." And then the other people go, "No, she's really nice. No, she's super nice. And that perked my ears up, and I was like, "Wait, is she really that nice? If you want to tell me how nice she is she really that nice?"
Right.
That's what I feel like A&M fans are with Marcel Reed.
Yeah, my thing is like I peruse Texags. You know, and like if you go and you look at Texas game and the Miami game, like, you know, I don't think I'm alone there. And then you start digging into the numbers of like what he did against elite competition, and it's average. Like, it's not bad, you know, but it's average. And so against a tougher schedule without Casey Concepcion, like, I still think I'm going to view the A&M season of like how good their run game is, how can they rebuild the offensive line, what is the talent around Marcel Reed. I'm not expecting Marcel Reed to lead Texas A&M to an SEC championship. But if Texas State wins a Pac-12 championship, it'll be because Brad Jackson led them there.
100%.
If SMU gets back to the ACC championship, it'll be because Kevin Jennings had a big year. If Texas does it, it'll be Archman, right? Like, the Plains are built around those quarterbacks in a way that A&M hasn't, and that's fine. Like, that's not a bad thing. They're just choosing to build their offense differently than a lot of these teams did, and you know, I just don't consider Marcel Reed to be one of the top 10 or 20 quarterbacks in the country.
Let's talk about some of the quarterback situations at the other programs. So Marcel Reed is your honorable mention. Brad Jackson is my honorable mention. I think there's a next crop of guys right there. It's probably Owen McCown at UTSA, and then Baylor DJ Lagway, because we've seen the glimpses of him at Florida, like he was a freshman All-American, and then we saw the sophomore year where he's just super injured. Like, I think those guys are probably 7 and 8, right around there.
Yeah, I think a good question is like which of the quarterbacks outside the list have the best chance of breaking into it.
DJ Lagway, 100%.
DJ Lagway is the name to know there, and it's not only because of his ceiling as a player. He's a 5-star Mr. Texas football, got a bunch of money from Florida. It's not like he forgot arm strength. And I think if we put all 13 projected starters out on a field and we were just doing combine stuff, like, we'd walk away going like, we need to draft DJ Lagway, you know, because he like still has that in there. But what gives me hope that Lagway can find that out is Jake Spavital. I think he's going to a very quarterback-friendly offense who knows how to do these kind of reclamation projects. They're going to allow Lagway to do what he does well and eliminate some of the stuff that maybe he struggles with, and that's turning the ball over. I just don't know if he saw the field all that well at Florida, and some of that is because he never got to practice. Yeah. He was always injured. I think he missed both spring balls that he was there at Florida. He didn't get to do a bunch this last summer leading into the season. There's a lot of chaos going around with Billy Napier, and then he walks into the same situation at Baylor at the head coaching job. The difference is the head coach at Florida was the offensive coordinator calling the plays. Mm-hmm. At Baylor, it's not. Yeah. Right? And he's just going to get to learn from Spav, learn in that system. Things are going to get simpler for him. The defenses aren't going to be as good. He's not going to play against SEC defenses. So I think if we're doing this in December of next year and we're ranking the 5 best quarterbacks from 2026, the guy most likely to break into that top 5 that wasn't there for me is Lagway.
The situation of, Florida bet the whole Billy Napier tenure on DJ Lagway did not work out. Then he's going to Baylor. They're betting the whole Dave Aranda tenure on DJ Lagway. We'll see if it works out. It's kind of like Arrested Development, where they have that scene where it's like, well, did it work for these other people? No, it never does. Like, they delude themselves into thinking this would work if we get this 6'4" quarterback who was a 5-star in high school to work out at a second school. It never works for them. But it could work for us.
It could work for us. That's a top 5 show of all time. By the way. I loved Arrested Development. When I think of things that were like taken away from me, like probably in the top 10 is Arrested Development. Like one is the Houston Oilers, that's still the one that hurts the most. But when they canceled Arrested Development too soon, it really hurt my heart. That's a great show.
It's on Netflix now, though.
Tremendous show. Yeah, it should have gotten long. Should have been like a Seinfeld length show.
Yeah.
Like they should have kept going. It was a
well, now Jason Bateman just plays that character in every single show he does.
That's true.
It just ramps up the intensity in Ozark. Like if you watch Ozark and Arrested Development, Jason Bateman is kind of the same character, except one of them he's selling drugs, and the other one, what was the crime they were doing in Arrested Development?
Oh, they were like
also selling drugs.
Well, they were laundering. No,
laundering.
It was the houses. They were building like crappy houses and stuff, and they like they weren't real. They were kind of laundering money there. I named my daughter. My daughter's name is Lucille. I call her Lucille 3. Because there's like a Lucille 1, a Lucille 2 in the show. And I call her Lucille 3 all the time.
When you're heading to Denton for game day, make it more than just 4 quarters of football. Make it a weekend to remember. Discover Denton's vibrant downtown square, amazing food scene, live music every night, and hotels that put you close to all the action. Whether it's mean green football or just a Texas getaway, Denton is where hip intersects with historic. Plan your visit now at discoverdenton.com. All right, so you talked about other schools that have quarterback competitions. I think it's UTEP right now and Rice. They're the 2 programs you were saying?
Yeah, and North Texas. So
North Texas.
At Texas, Arch Manning is there's not a competition at the P4 level. Right? Here are the P4 starters. There's Arch Manning, Marcel Reed at A&M, Brendan Sorsby at Tech, Connor Wegman at Houston, DJ Lagway at Baylor, and then Jaden Craig's a name that we didn't talk about. The Harvard transfer at TCU, they're very high on him. I know some guys that coach at Harvard. They think he's an excellent player. And then it's it's just at the G5 level, there's a couple. Rice, because they lost, Chase Jenkins left for Kansas, and so they go and they get Ja'Cory Brown from UCF and Gail Ochoa from UNLV. I think that's Brown's job to lose. I feel like he was brought in to be the starter. Ochoa brought in to be depth. I think UTEP attacked it the same way. E.J. Colson from UIW brought in to be the starter. Raymond Moore from Morgan State brought in to be depth, to back up, to push these guys. And if they have excellent springs, they can, maybe launch themselves into a legit quarterback competition. I think the one that is on paper like an actual quarterback competition, where if you ask guys who cover that team, do you know who's going to start right now? It's North Texas. Chris Jimerson is a holdover from the previous staff. I know Neil Brown was a big fan of him, really wanted to keep him there. And then they bring in Taven Jackson from UCF, who's an experienced guy who's played some football at the P4 level before. He's older, maybe the favorite to win that job going into spring. But of the 13 jobs in the state of Texas, I think I could comfortably predict 12 starters in week 1. North Texas is the one that's open, which is funny because North Texas was open last year too. We talked about this kind of same thing where there's not a lot of quarterback competitions, and now it looks silly because Drew Mestemaker had the year that he had. But they had an open competition at quarterback last year as well.
The freeze frame of Taven Jackson and Chris Jimerson standing next to each other is going to look like Jose Altuve and Aaron Judge standing on second base together. Could not be 2 more different body types.
Yeah, and they brought in the Chaston Dita. I don't know if I'm saying that right, from East Carolina.
I think it's Dita.
But I don't think he's a factor in terms of start. He's a redshirt freshman as well, younger. I don't think he's going to be in the mix there. If I had to pick, I'm going with Jackson because he's the experienced guy. He's the older guy. But I do think Chris Jimerson is alive in that competition in a way that a lot of depth guys aren't across the state.
Well, I'm happy. I don't know if I should say I'm happy there's not as many quarterback competitions because it gives us less to talk about. But it'll make me seem less wrong on the magazine, like when Scotty Walton smokescreened me into thinking Skylar Locklear was going to start week 1. When I literally went into that UTEP meeting with Scotty Walton, I said, I am writing down Malachi Nelson, the 5-star, no matter what, to start. And Scotty Walton was so convincing that Skylar Locklear had the best spring he'd ever seen and was squatting with the linemen. And I said, you know what? Skylar Locklear is going to start week 1.
Yeah, so I struggle with that with the magazine, not to get too inside baseball, but it's is the point to get the week 1 starter right or the player who's going to start more right?
I think it's to get the week 1 starter right.
Because to me, it always, we talked about it, we can go back and look at old podcasts. I predicted exactly what would happen at UTEP. Mm-hmm. They'd have to start Malachi Nelson because he's the name, he's the 5-star, he got the NIL money and the bump to come to UTEP. But it's Shane Locklear's job because he knows the offense and he's just a better quarterback. And I think that played out throughout the year. Like Locklear became the guy because he was the better quarterback, the more consistent quarterback, and Malachi Nelson was so up and down. So I don't think you were all that wrong there. I think the one that was most wrong was Reese Poffenbarger as the North Texas quarterback when Drew Mestemaker became it. But that's the function of doing this in May and in April and not in August, because I think when we did the magazine, Poffenbarger was leading the North Texas gig. And when we did the magazine, Locklear was leading the UTEP gig. And same with like Sam Houston when it ended up being Landon Locke. By the end of the season, he wasn't a name anybody mentioned with like Sam Houston starting quarterback stuff, but he emerges as the starter. So maybe that happens across the board here, and there's a few that end up being surprises. But the way it was kind of what we talked about at the start of the show, with the money now, you just have to pick your guy, and you got to ride with them. And the competition that solidified that for me, that made me start thinking about it differently in college football, was DeQuan Finn and Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. Mm-hmm. Because I remember going there in spring ball and talking to some of those guys throughout the summer, and I don't think it's talking out of turn to say like they were pretty aware that Sawyer Robertson was a better fit for what they wanted to do and was the better quarterback. But they had invested so much into bringing DeQuan Finn in there. How do you go to the donors and admit a mistake before the season even starts? Yeah. You almost have to let their money be out on the field and then go, well, we'll have a better chance winning with this guy on the sideline. That was on us. But if you admit that mistake on August 5th in practice, it's like, well, what did we give you all that money for, you know? And so I think that is why the Malachi Nelsons of the world, the Daquan Finns, like they get a couple of chances, is because it's the sunken cost theory. Like, we've spent money on this guy. We convinced donors to pay for this guy. We have to start them, even if we've seen some stuff behind the scenes that isn't there. And I think it's just kind of eliminated quarterback competitions. I wonder if the spring portal brings them back. No spring portal.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, in the past couple of years, if spring ball ends and you know you're second on the depth chart, you can go leave.
Yep.
But, like, now, maybe coaches are more willing to bring in a quarterback who can push their starter, because you get to keep those guys over the summer and into the fall, and it can be a real quarterback competition. Those are just things that we'll have to figure out as we kind of like navigate the new landscape that is new every single year.
You know that meme of like the couple laying in bed and the girl's like, I wonder what he's thinking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you like thinking of Reese Poffenbarger right now?
Yeah.
Like when you're in that meme, if I put your head on that guy's face,
yeah,
just keeps you up at night.
Yeah, some of that does. Honestly, the thing, that's a good question. What is the thing that haunts you the most in that? Mine is the predictions, like the record predictions. Mm-hmm. You know, I always try to be within like 2 games one way or the other. And anything above that like really wrecks my soul. You know, like to be 3 or 4 games wrong one end or the other, like that feels bad. You know, like that bothers me more than like a projected lineup thing, because, you know, to clue people in on this stuff, especially when the spring portal existed, you left a lot of times from those interviews with the coaches going, I don't know who our left guard is. Yeah. Like, I have no idea. Like, call me back in August. Like, we'll figure it out later. You know, I think some of that gets helped with the spring portal stuff, but I don't care too much about the projected starters. I care more about the overarching kind of narratives and themes of the season and just the predictions in that way. And I kind of see it as like us setting expectations, mm-hmm. and like who overachieved and who underachieved those expectations. But if you're like 3 games, 4 games off, it's like, I just had a misread on that. Like Baylor. Yeah. Like I just had a misread on Baylor last year. Underestimated Houston, even though I talked myself into it by like August. You know, in April and May, I think I had Houston at 6-6, and they go and win 10 games. Like, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, taking Owen McCown number 1 overall in our fantasy draft is what keeps me up the most.
Or like all-state stuff gets me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I had Randy Bond as the number 1 all-state kicker, and he like got benched before the season even started. You know, and it was just like, man, that one's not good. Like, stuff like that is what.
For the first 6 weeks, Arch Manning being first-team All-Texas was keeping me up.
Yeah, I was getting a lot of texts about that.
But then you saw that Cheez-It Bowl, and you're like, you know what? Mm-hmm. That was pretty smart.
But then there's like some other things in the magazine, like I went through like the big predictions, because we do the national writer
Oh, I had some bad ones.
Oh, there were some awful ones. Like some of my buddies, like just awful ones. Like Chris Hummers was awful. Like it was like, and Chris Hummers my guy, and his prediction was like the top 3 finishers in the Heisman will be the 3 Texas quarterbacks, like Nussmeier, Klubnik, Arch Manning.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
And like that wasn't very good. But mine was the Big Ten will win a third straight national championship with a different team, like with a third different team. Now, if you read too far into it, it was Penn State that I picked. So not great that way, but Indiana saved me there. So I look like
on the
a
surface,
genius.
it was great.
I look like a genius if you just read but the context of it. So yeah, I mean, we're getting into magazine season right now. We're about to start talking about what's going to be on it, what's not going to be on it, how we're going to do it and stuff. And so it makes me start looking back at previous magazine. I think we do a pretty good job.
And because I'm on the high school writing side, I don't do those college predictions anymore. So I can no longer say I think UTSA cornerback Denver Harris is going to be the biggest impact newcomer.
Yeah.
And we see how that turned out. So I'm going to give you all of my unfiltered takes here on this podcast. So you got to stay tuned for that. Well, Craven, any closing thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, it was nice. It was nice being in the studio. This is not a bad way to live. You got it pretty good.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
This beats my office. Just looking out the window. It's pretty nice in here.
Well, if you want to drive up here for every podcast we do, you should come on up.
I mean, I wouldn't mind. It's my wife would probably not be okay with that. So, and probably neither of the bosses either.
Do you want me to talk to her?
No. I'm keeping you as far away from my wife as possible. You're a younger, better looking version. I'm not. No way.
Well, for senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates, signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. We will be back next week, probably virtually, but still bringing that same energy.